It is fucking hot today, I tell you what. Goddamn fucking hot. Hot as shit. Real hot. Hot potato. Hot goddamn potato. Real hot potato. Big old molten ass potato. Big old fresh out of the oven potato. I tell you what, hot as shit. Baked potato. Creamy baked potato. Put some sour cream on this day. It's so gosh dang hot. God damn it. All right. Welcome to Sentimental Fools, okay? All right. Guess what, okay? We're talking about books today. Yeah, books. Yeah. Real books, man. Real pick 'em up, leaf through, right? Real page turners, okay? Yeah. Okay. Not just talking about books in general, all right? We're talking about a particular author today and some of his books. We're talking about the late, the great Frank Herbert. You know him, you love him, it's Frank. It's good old Frankie, okay? We're talking about Frankie. Now, obviously, more than anything, Frank Herbert is known for, let me hear you say it, Dune. The spice, the quizrask harak, or however the hell you say that. God, the quizrax harak. All right, now. But here's the thing, man. Here's the thing. I'm not really talking about Dune today. Obviously, that's what he's really known for. Even before the movie in 1984 with Sting. Good old Sting. Nothing like young fit Sting in a leotard, huh? Pretty good. Anyway. Doctor! Anyway. Even before that, right? Dune was a smash hit, okay? It was flying off the shelves. Every science fiction enthusiast in the country was getting down on Dune, okay? All right. And then the movie, even though it was one of those things, like it didn't do super well when it came out, but then it kind of became a cult classic, right? And a little tidbit, Frank Herbert actually he loved it. He was very happy. He was involved in a lot of the creative decisions in that first Dune film. And you got to think of it from his perspective. Even if you don't like it, even if it was whatever, even if it feels weird or whatever, you got to think of it from his perspective. You know, that was the first time anything he wrote, right, became real. You know, became visual, became a film, right? So he was thrilled. And yes, they made a couple weird changes with the weird sound guns and oh my God, I mean, the final cut of it, they just rushed the third act like they're just sprinting through the third act, which is crazy because so much cool stuff happens in like the third act of the book. So it has some issues, and it's not all David Lynch's fault. He tried his hardest. I don't blame him. It's a hard movie to make. But anyway, Frank Herbert was pumped. So keep that in mind the next time you check that out. And I think it's great anyway, I'll tell you what. Okay? And so when that movie came out, it brought some more attention to Dune, right? But it just remained just a favorite. Just a sci-fi enthusiast favorite through and through, all throughout the years. And it kind of felt like, not exactly, obviously it's widely popular, but it almost felt like if you got into Dune, you were like, almost part of like a secret club. Again, not exactly, very popular, but it kind of felt that way a little bit, And then now we have these new Dune movies, which I love. I'm not going to talk about them very much, okay? I'm not going to talk about the new Dune movies. You'll see what we're getting into and you'll see why, okay? It's not what we're doing today, but obviously we're talking Frank Herbert, okay? So you got to talk a little Dune. You got to talk a little Dune, okay? Just a little Dune, okay? Tiny Dune. Okay, so the of the new movies that have come out, the first one I thought was wonderful. I thought it did the book justice very much. I had such a great time. I cried a bunch. It was a very special day going to see that. Very special day. Waited for it for a long time. It was delayed, blah, blah, blah. Finally came. Great day. The second one, I have so many complicated feelings about. Okay? I have so many complicated feelings about. Objectively, great film. Did I think it do I think it did justice to the book? Do I think it represented the real essence of the story? Not quite. Not quite. But you know what? I could be wrong. All right? I've done a ton of research into Frank Herbert's intentions and his inspiration for the stories. I really dug in deep, and I feel my feelings are based mostly in researched evidence, but I still could be wrong. I don't know. It's really just how I feel about the book and the energy I think it has and that kind of thing. So whatever, man. But point being that these movies, they brought even more people into the world of Dune. Even more, right? And it's a little weird. It doesn't exactly feel like a special club anymore. And it's a little sad, but you know what? That's okay. That's okay. That's what happens. That's what happens to successful things that deserve to be appreciated. That's just what happens, and that's okay. And again, I could be wrong about that. I'm just having my own subjective experience, So what are you going to do? But anyway, okay. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to talk about today, and then I'm going to get into it, okay? So I'm not talking about Dune today. I'm not talking about Dune. You know about Dune. You've seen the movies. You know about Dune. You were at the theater, sticking your dick in the sandworm popcorn bucket like everybody else, okay? We don't need to talk about Dune. You know Dune. However, Frank Herbert wrote a bunch of other one-off novels, and you know what? They're fucking good, man. A lot of them are fucking good, okay? And that's what we're going to talk about today. All right? You don't need to hear me blather on about Dune. Maybe we can do that some other time, okay? But we're talking about the other stuff he wrote today. Not everything, but a lot of gems. A lot of gems. There might be a little bit of spoilers, that kind of thing. But we're going to talk about these. I think they just deserve some love. And I know there's a lot of folks out there who give these some love, but there should be more. Because honestly, these individual novels we're going to talk about today, they are all good enough to be movies themselves. Okay? All right. So I want to give you a little bit of background, okay? Just a little bit of background on how I got into Frank Herbert, just to set the stage, okay? All right. So I had heard about Dune just in the air, right? Living life, you hear about Dune. Someone makes a spice reference. You ask what that is, and they tell you, and you're like, oh, okay, interesting. It's this Dune thing. It's in the air. So I heard about it in the air, okay? And then, honestly, it wasn't until a good buddy of mine showed me the 1984 Dune. And even though it's a weird movie, excuse me, even though it's a goofy movie, it intrigued me, right? The story, the world, the characters, it was all, I was drawn in. I was taken in, okay? And I'm like, okay, wow. I need to get in here myself. So, I bought the first book. I bought the first Dune book on my phone. Okay, I was reading it on my phone, right? And now I just want to sidestep for a moment and tell you that if you haven't read the books yet, or seen the movies or anything, but especially if you haven't read the books and you want to get into reading the books, okay, just get through the first couple chapters, all right? Dune is a massive world that has a story that spans thousands and thousands of years. Okay, it's a big old world on a big old timeline. Okay, big old timeline, big old juicy timeline. Okay, and the first couple chapters, it's just like he's just telling you everything you're gonna need to know, pretty much, to like just get a sense of what you're seeing, just get a sense of the world, right? It's just very information heavy right off the bat. It's a lot of crazy stuff, just about the government and the houses and just the politics and the religion and all this stuff. It's front loaded heavy. Just get through that, right? Just power through, and then it starts flowing, and it starts flowing real good. So good. It was one of those books that I would wake up every day excited to be awake again because I could continue reading it. There's a reason that it is beloved. There is a reason it is beloved and talked about and debated and made, film adaptations and television series and all this stuff. There is a reason. Of course there is. Of course there is. Every day I woke up excited for another day being alive so that I could continue to read Dune. Okay? So I read Dune. I read Dune Messiah. I read Children of Dune. I read all the Dune series, right? But I just, I'm the kind of person, like, I don't just fall in love with books. I fall in love with authors. If I find an author that I just dig their style, like, I'll just read everything they do. It's like when you find a director that you love. Like, if you're a big fan of Wes Anderson, like Wes Anderson I'm a big fan of Wes Anderson. He could make any kind of movie, any genre of film, any vibe of story, even if it's something that I may not be naturally attracted to. I'm watching it because I trust him. I like his style. I like his writing, his delivery, right? It's one of those things. If I find a good author, a good director, right? A good musician, a good artist, right? It's just like, hey, ride or die. Whatever you do, I will look at because I trust you. And I know no matter what the subject is, what the vibe is, what the setting, what the style is, it's gonna be, I'm gonna be into it. Okay. So Frank Herbert, it was one of those things. It's like, okay, everything about this, just the way he's approaching this, the way he's approaching the story, the ideas he explores, like the things he's interested in, I vibe with it, right? So I wanted to get everything, right? So at this moment, I do. It took me a while, but I did get together a complete Frank Herbert book collection, right? All the Dune series, all the individual novels, all the short stories. Obviously, it's not 100% complete. It's not like every scrap of paper with scribbles on it that he ever did. But it's all the major releases, right? I was very happy. And I'm not usually like that. I'm not like a completionist, like collector all the time, right? I'm picky about it. There's a couple things that I'm like, God damn, I just want everything that you did. I want to experience all of it. Okay. So yeah, that's how I got into Frank Herbert, through Dune, through the old movie, and then just started exploring all the other novels. And I was delighted to find that the other novels, they were, oh my God, they hit just as hard. Obviously, they're individual novels. They're not as grand a scale as the Dune series. Dune was his big baby. Dune was his major epic baby, right? These other one-offs were smaller explorations, but man, they hit. They fucking hit, man. So we're going to talk about some of the other ones today, okay? Now, we're not going to talk about all of them. Some of them hit more than others, and I still haven't gotten through all of them. There's quite a few, and I read in spurts, right? I'll like go through, like a few, period of a few months where I'm just cruising through books, and then I'll back off, and then I'll be doing something else for a while, right? So I'm not reading a book all the time. But I was able to get through a lot of these. There was this period where I was living in the city, man, and I was taking the bus all the time. And so I had a lot of downtime to read, and I slammed through so many good books, right? All right, so we're not going to talk about all of them. Haven't read all of them. Some of them, they aren't as interesting. They're all worth it. They're all worth the read. But some of them are just wonderful. Some of them are a little forgettable. So we're just a few highlights today. Just a few highlights, okay? So, and then one more thing before I get into that. I'm going to take a drink of my coffee here, okay? Got a little coffee going on. Oh, that's good. That's damn good, okay. Sorry for all the mouth noises. You like those mouth noises? You like that shit got that shit in your ear? You like that shit in your ear, man? Okay. So, one more thing before I get into this. Now, whenever I really take to an author, an artist, a musician, or something, I like, if I can, if I'm really into them, to like read, ideally they have an autobiography or even a biography. I like to get into it. I like to find out like what makes this person tick. What kind of experiences did this person have? Like how their lives play out that they made this art, that they wrote these things, right? So Frank Herbert didn't have an autobiography, but he does have a biography, and it's thick as all get out. It's a big old tome, okay? Big old tome, okay? And here it is. Yes, Frank Herbert, the dreamer of Dune. If you like Frank Herbert, if you like Dune, I tell you what, it's worth it. It's worth getting in there and hearing the stories, seeing all the things. All right. I did read all of this. It was great. It took a while. It's a big old boy, big thick boy. Okay. But worth the read. Worth the read. A lot of fun. I tell you. So it's written by his eldest son, Brian Herbert. Okay. It's written by his son, which kind of an interesting situation, right? Have your biography written by your oldest son, because the father-son relationship, the parent-child relationship, that's a very unique point of view, it's a very unique point of view, and it's always so different, so interesting vibe, he gives you everything that you would want to know, just like his history, experiences that he had, just kind of the different chapters of Frank Herbert's life, but he's also his son. So it's also like kind of emotional in that way. So it's like, it's like a few pages of like an interesting memory, an interesting experience that Frank Herbert went through. And then and then one page of like, fuck you, Dad. Fuck you, Dad. You care about those books more than you care about me. Should have been looking at me, but you were at your typewriter, okay? Not exactly that, but a little bit, okay? A little bit. How can you blame him? That's parents, children. That's what it is. It's what it is, So it's interesting in that way. It's kind of unique, but it's not bad. It's not bad. It's kind of fun. Just a couple interesting things from this. Like the one of the funniest little tidbits is that early on, I think Frank had already gotten married at this point. But like early on where he was writing, he had a little bit of success, but like not enough to like totally pay the bills. And certainly nothing like what he would go on to experience with when Dune started to pick up steam, right? He was living in kind of like a rustic cabin somewhere. And to save money on heat, they had a wood burning stove. And to save money on heat, he signed up for as many like mailer, like newsletters as he could. Just signed up for all of them, just coupon books and newsletters and just everything that, everything, all this kind of free advertisement. And he'd take all that junk mail and throw it in the wood burning stove for like free heat. Helped him get through. But then those subscriptions like haunted him for the rest of his life. Just enormous amounts of junk mail for years and years after, because of his little clever idea to get free fuel. Okay, just a little fun tidbit. But some other interesting things like, he went to he lived in Mexico for a little bit. He lived in kind of a small Mexican village for a little bit. Kind of driven by, that romanticized artist fantasy, that like, oh, I'm just gonna I'm gonna go off to a more isolated place, a more scenic, isolated place, a cabin in the woods, a shack in the mountains, a little house in a tropical place, where I can focus on my art. And in his case, focus on his writing. But then through that realize like, oh, life is complicated and dramatic and, like engaging everywhere, wherever you go, if there's people around, life goes on. Life, keeps coming at you, right? You can't, obviously, you can really isolate yourself. You want to go to the middle of the Alaskan wilderness and, you can do that. But for the most part, if you want to live in any kind of society, right, in any kind of community, I should say, right, around people, life comes at you, it doesn't feel that much different. People are people, and so he like learned a valuable lesson and eventually came back. Realizing that like this isn't like benefiting my writing in the way I thought it would be. Like this still feels like life, after he had all the success from Dune, he was doing very well financially, and his wife, who he loved to pieces, a really great relationship story that plays out in Frank Herbert's life. He loved his wife to pieces. She experienced a lot of health problems, and he just got whatever she needed. He would do whatever he had to do to improve the quality of her life, and helped her live as long as she could, And like she was, they lived in the Pacific Northwest. They lived in Port Townsend, Washington. Beautiful little town, so cool. But the weather there, the environment, that like cold, humid kind of thing, it made her, and I forget exactly what she was struggling with, but it exacerbated her symptoms. And so that drove him to be like, okay, well, where's the best environment for you to live? What would be the best environment? And they figured it out, and it was like a hot, tropical, humid environment, like somewhere closer to the equator. So he's like, got it. And so he bought a little house in Hawaii, but it wasn't because he wanted he wanted the flex, because he had money now. It was just for her. It was just so she had a place to live on the planet where she could feel as best as she possibly could. So a very sweet story there. And also just one of those interesting things that, it makes you think about death in a strange way. In regards to the timing, like when death comes for us, because death came for his wife just after she like had everything set up the way she wanted to. Like she spent a long time kind of like preparing to die. She knew it was coming, and she wanted everything to go smoothly for the people in her life after she died. And like as soon as she got all that set up, she died. And then after her death, there was stuff Frank Herbert still wanted to do. And a lot of it involved her. You know, things that like, oh, she said I should always do this, you know. One of those things was co-write a book with his oldest son, who went on to be an author in his own right, wrote a lot of books in the Dune universe, you know, exploring all the corners of the Dune universe and just expounding on things and expanding. But she said, you know, you guys should write a book together, you know, probably because their relationship was a little strained because Frank Herbert was one of those guys, he was obsessed with his work, you know, he would just dial in and in that he did, I wouldn't say he was a bad father, you know, he certainly gave his kids good opportunities and a good life, but because he was so dialed in and focused on his work, you know, it's a story as old as time. Dialed in and focused on your work, you're not able to give your kids the amount of presence and attention, you know, that a kid needs to feel validated and seen and prioritized, right? So not the worst situation, but it's, you know, it's that classic thing, you know? And so Frank Herbert's wife was thinking like, you guys should write a book together, you know, and maybe through that kind of heal a little bit and like make up for the bonding that didn't happen when you were younger. And so he had like some stuff like, you know, these are the things I'd like to do for my wife, like after she passed away. And as soon as he finished doing those things, he died. So just one of those interesting situations where as soon as she handled her business, she's like, okay, done, out. And as soon as he handled his unfinished business, he's like, all right, I'm gonna go meet her, you know, or whatever, you know. Yeah, just very interesting. I'll tell one more little story from the biography a little later when we talk about one of these books. But yeah, I just wanted to say this first. If you're into Frank Herbert, if you're into Dune, check it out, man. You know, if you really want to dig in there, hear all the stories, go on the adventure, see what inspired him to write Dune. Because it was just all these natural experiences, you know, like the first thing that, the thing that sparked Dune was the water-like, the liquid-like movements of sand dunes. He saw sand dune movement from an aerial view from a helicopter, and they were like the dunes were like encroaching on a patch of roadway. And he was asking questions of somebody about them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, they kind of like they'll drift in certain times of the year when the winds change." And he started asking more questions about the movement, and he's like, "Oh, it moves just like water, but just slower, just at a different rate, but it has the same kind of movement property." And that's one of those moments, you know, in your life where you start seeing how like everything moves like that, you know. Everything moves in a similar pattern, in a similar fashion, you know? So that was like the first spark, you know? And so it's just full of like all the elements of Dune that you love, that you're intrigued by. They're all just organically from like little moments in his life that made him stop and pause and go, "Oh, that is interesting. Oh, I need to explore that. I need to think on that. I need to be creative with that, you know? There's something there. There's something there." Yeah, so recommended. Okay, let's talk about some of these books, all right? My, oh my. Let's start at the beginning. Let's start at his first official novel. I believe so. His first official novel release. Okay? Whoop. Okay. First official novel, we have Dragon in the Sea. Okay? So I think when I started to get into reading Frank Herbert's other works, I think I started here as well. I'm like, hey, he started there. I might as well start there too, right? And man, I forget how well it did when it came out. I think it did fine. But man, I was into it, man. Like, just right away, I'm like, yep, okay, you got me, buddy. You fucking got me, buddy, okay? Oh, just on board right away. So I'll tell you a little bit about this. Okay, so Dragon in the Sea, okay? It's set in a world where World War II just kept going, okay? It just kept going for decades and decades and decades, right? And now the real major, valuable resource that is fought over, like just the main player of the war is just like getting access to more oil to power the war machines. It's just a big fight for, like, oil is just becoming more and more scarce. It's just a big fight for oil because you start running out of oil, you can't power your machines, and there goes the war, you know? So it's just this big fight over oil, right? So 90% of this story takes place on a futuristic nuclear submarine, okay? Futuristic nuclear submarine going behind enemy lines, okay? Behind enemy lines to steal oil from the Axis powers, okay? Okay? Now, here's the big drama. If that wasn't drama enough for you, all right? They set it up that, like, there's all this sabotage going on in this war, you know? It's this classic war shit, man. They're spies, right? Undercover, working for the other side, you know, that kind of thing. They suspect that one of the crew members is a spy, is a traitor, okay? So they put a new person, right, on the crew who has a secret mission, right? He's supposed to, like, root out the traitor, right? And so he has like this piece of technology that, like, essentially gives like readouts of people's like emotional development, you know, like kind of the feelings they're having and all this like biofeedback data on them. So and he's an expert at reading and interpreting this data. He's like an emotional data analyst, okay? And through this data and his analysis of it, he feels like he can, like, root out, like, okay, who is not what they appear to be, all right? But to the rest of the crew, he's just a replacement crew member, right? They're a little suspicious of him, but it's whatever, you know? So there's that extra drama there, all right? So first of all, the setting. Holy shit, dude. Deep underwater, nuclear submarine, right? Not only are you in a submarine, right? Already, drama level 1, right? Because when you're down there in a submarine, every tiny little thing is a big deal. You hear one little weird sound, one little weird clink, and they're like, what the fuck is that? Investigate that immediately, right? Because every little thing matters when you're deep down under the ocean in a little pressurized tube, you know? Every little thing matters. Every little smell, every little tiny little, what's that? Get it. Figure it out. Priority number 1, like, everything is important. Everything has weight. So it just sucks you in so hard, okay? And it's a nuclear submarine, right? So it's not just a submarine, but it has a nuclear core, right? And so there's that element of, like, managing that. You're not just thinking about, You're not just thinking about how to manage the machinery, and the propulsion and, like, the operating of of this submarine, but it's a nuclear submarine. You're also like worried about radiation exposure, right? You also have that knowledge of just like how much radiation exposure can we take and come back from and heal from? When is it too much? You know? So there's that, boom, drama level 2. And then drama level 3, they're at fucking war. This ain't no pleasure cruise, buddy. Okay? They're at war. They're sneaking around behind enemy lines, right? They see something on the radar. They shit their pants. They freak out, you know? So they're at goddamn war, right? That's just another way that they could die. Another thing that's going to kill them. Is the submarine going to kill them? Is the nuclear core going to kill them? Is our enemy subs and ships are going to kill them, right? And then boom, a fourth layer of drama. One of these guys is a traitor, right? Or is the spy going to kill him? Just so many ways to die, right? So many dramatic angles, all right? So man, just start to finish, you are just locked in. You are just locked in. All right. So I highly recommend. This is one of the first novels. I highly recommend it. Came out of the goddamn gate swinging, baby. Came out swinging, son. Okay. So much fun. So intense. I'm going to tell you my favorite part. There's this great moment, right? Where this is great. This is great. Pay attention. Pay attention, y'all. This is important. One of the crew members, right? One of the crew members becomes incredibly convinced, right, that the guy that's been planted there, like by their own government to root out the traitor, he becomes convinced that that person is the traitor, right? And he becomes convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt, right? He's just like, it's him. There's no way it's not him, right? And when he feels that way, he beats the shit out of him. He just unleashes just no mercy, completely unempathetic, just violent fury on him. It doesn't kill him, but just beats the shit out of him, right? And he finds out later that he wasn't the traitor, right? That he was wrong. And he confesses to this man. He apologizes as best as one can, that's just beat the ever-loving tar out your face, right? That he realized that when you think someone is just evil, you know, when you're so sure that this is the enemy, you know, they cease to be a person. You know, they just become the evil. They just become the enemy. And when they cease to be a person, you can justify any action against them. All right? And man, that hits, don't it? Because that's what humans do, you know? When you other somebody, you know, they're not a person. They're just the devil. They're just evil. They're just the enemy. You can justify anything against the enemy, against the devil, right? But at some point you find out that is just another person. That is just another person. And yeah, you know, and it's crazy. So that hits, man. That hits. He explored that idea in there. I never forgot that. Hits hard, man. So yeah, so much fun. Highly recommended. Dramatic, intense, heavy, nail-biting. So great. So great. Highly recommended. Okay, let's talk about another one. Let's see what we got. Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's do... Yeah, let's do this. Okay, this one took me by surprise. Okay? I just didn't know what I was in for, right? This is Frank Herbert's The Whipping Star. Okay, The Whipping Star. Has some aspects of it that are real weird. But then it has other aspects of it that makes it one of my favorite Frank Herbert books that he's written. Okay? Oh my God. So the bulk of the book is A dialogue between a human man and a conscious entity of a vastly different order, right? I'm going to spoil it, okay? I'm going to spoil it because you should read it anyway. The reveal here, it doesn't really take away from the experience. It's still just so well done, okay? So we find out later on in the book that this man has been in communication with a star, right? Like the celestial body, right? A gas giant, a star, right? Out in space. A conscious star. He's been having a dialogue in English, right? As the star is attempting to communicate with him on his level. And the way that this star experiences reality is way different than how the human man experiences reality. Like in the book, they say, you know, it's as if you as a human man are trying to have a conversation using language to a single-celled organism in a pond, you know, like a little bit of algae or something, or a microbe or something like that, right? And gosh, it's so good. The way Frank Herbert explores this thought experiment, like what would it really be like if they tried to have a conversation? If an entity at this level of consciousness tried to talk to a human level of consciousness, you know? And man, you can tell that he really thought deeply on it. He really thought deeply, and he explored it from all these different angles. And so I'm telling you, if you like Frank Herbert, you gotta read this shit. It's so fascinating the way they talk and the way they figure out how to understand one another, because there's all these ways that the star is communicating that don't make sense to the human, because the star is kind of, you know, it's like thinking like fourth dimensionally, you know, it's thinking across vast spans of time, like time doesn't mean the same thing, you know. So it's just these two very unrelatable points of view in the universe trying to find common ground, and it's done so well. And as you can see, pretty quick read, but man, just heavy, again, just a page turner. You just want to see how their conversation develops. Now, the weird part, right, is the reason that they're having this conversation is because the star needs help. Because the star, this is so weird. I can't believe this is going to come out of my mouth. The star has entered into a deal with this like wild, like sadomasochistic, narcissist, like female ruler, you know, like think like Alice in Wonderland's the Red Queen, but she's like really into BDSM, you know? Yeah, what the fuck, man? What is this? I mean, the rest of the story is so good, and overall, it's so intriguing that like you kind of just, you're like, yeah, that's fine, yeah. But when you really look at it, it's just like, where did this come from? Why was that the motivation, right? So this star enters into a deal with this crazy lady, right? This crazy sadist. And like, God, I forget like what she gives the star, but in exchange, she gets to whip the star. Like that's why it's called whipping star. Okay, you know, and listen, I'm sure there's something metaphorical going on here. I'm sure there is. There better be. But it's hard to ponder what the metaphor could be. It's hard to think about that when the metaphor is so goddamn weird. She's literally like bullwhip, just like, yeah, like whipping a star, you know? I'm sure it means something, but it's kind of hard to just get past how weird that is. But I recommend you do get past it, right? Because, just the conversation The conversation that this human man has with this entity is just to die for. It's so interesting. It's so thought-provoking. So there's been a few works, a few books, a few films that have explored a similar thing. Maybe one you probably know is that film Arrival, right? Where the bulk of the film is humanity learning how to communicate with these alien life forms who have a much different experience of reality. And they're trying to figure out, and like, you know, they realize that like once you understand their language, like you understand how their minds work, and your mind starts to work like that, you know, because language is a big part of the foundation for how we perceive reality in general, which is entirely true. And so, which is why these kinds of explorations are so fascinating, right? And there's been other things, but this is a damn good one. Came out, you know, a while ago. I highly recommend it. Yeah, didn't think it would be that cool. But as soon as I realized like what was happening, you know, I was reading this and just going like, oh shit. Okay. Let's go. You know? So yeah, don't skip this one. Now, I think, this is the first, if I'm correct, I think I'm correct. This is the first, is that right? I think so. This is, okay, I'm not going to get this exactly right. This is one of the books in the Consentiency series, right? Frank Herbert had two other series of books, not just the Dune universe. This is the Consentiency series where all of these different like species of sentient life forms, all these different species of aliens from across the galaxy, they all unite under the same government. They all form like a central government, and so they all get together and they, you know, form all these things. They form a bureaucracy. They do all this stuff. And so Frank Herbert wrote a few books in that universe. Yeah. So yeah, don't sleep on that one. Very interesting. All right, moving on. What should we do next? Okay. Oh yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about this right now. Okay. This is another one of my favorites. Again, highly recommended. Yeah, seriously, any of these. If you like Frank Herbert, get into the individual novels, man. They're so good. They're quicker reads. They don't demand as much of your attention and presence and brain power as the Dune books do, as good as they are, you know. But they're still so thought-provoking, and they're quicker. There's just get into the action faster, that kind of stuff, you know, and it's really fun. So here we have the Santaroga Barrier, okay? I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. I'm going to spoil it a little bit, okay? But it's about this town that's kind of isolated. It seems kind of cut off, like a whole self-sufficient town that they only import just a couple things from outside the town. Otherwise, it's shut down. But they export stuff. They export cheese and beer and certain things. And the town, it functions very well, but it's a strange case. It's mysterious, right? And so a man is tasked with going to this town and just seeing what's up, you know? And at first, you know, he senses like a weird vibe, you know? Oh yeah, and like no one ever leaves too. It's one of those things. Like people just grow up there. They have kids with other people who live there. They grow up there. They stay. Like very few people ever like leave. And if they do leave, usually they come back later. Has this weird power, this draw, right? Mysterious. So he's there. He notices some weird vibes, you know, but nothing crazy, just some weird stuff. And he notices that there's this ingredient in like all the food, all the beer, all the cheese that they're famous for, right? And they call it Jaspers, right? And he tries like a Jaspers beer, and he's like, whoa, whew, shit's good. Damn, shit's good. What is this? And they're just like, oh, it's just an ingredient that we grow locally, right? Okay, so we find out later, all right? There's spoilers. I'm going to give this away, but still, fun read. Doesn't matter, okay? We find out later that this Jaspers is actually like a psychedelic fungus, right? Like a psychedelic mold akin to LSD or psilocybin or something. A psychedelic mold that they cultivate and put in their cheese, put in their beer, but they incorporate it into all their consumables in town, right? And so what we have, right, is this whole town that's on psychedelics, but isn't really aware of it, right? Because it's just their standard operating mode, you know? Like they're just from birth to death living in this town. They're on this psychedelic wavelength like the whole time. So it's not weird to them. They don't feel like, whoa, I'm tripping, man. It's just how they exist, right? You know? And so in a very similar way, you know, it's interesting to think about that an enormous portion of people in the modern world, especially the Western world, intake caffeine like regularly, daily, right? And so it's interesting that like, and that wasn't always the case. We weren't always, you know, like we didn't always have tea and coffee, you know? And so like because of that, we kind of live in a caffeinated world, right? We don't even like really notice it anymore. It's just a part of everyone's life. And because of that, it just feels normal. It doesn't feel weird, but the world is caffeinated, right? Before that, how people had safe water to drink, is they would ferment it, right? Make low-grade alcohol, right? And so before the world was caffeinated, the whole world was just kind of buzzed all the time, you know? And it just has a huge effect on like what society looks and feels like, you know? Just productivity, attitude, perspective, outlook, you know? And so here we have a little thought experiment on like, what about a community? What about a society that's tripping all the time, right? That's always like a psychedelic, a community under the influence of psychedelics, right? What would that look like? What kind of things might happen, right? And so again, here we see, what we're going to see throughout these individual novels is that Frank Herbert digs deeper into something he's interested in, right? Into a concept or a thought experiment, or like an experience he had. All of these things that like become a part, that like collect together and become a part of the Dune series, right? But each one of these individual novels is just like a little exploration on just one of those things that all come together, you know, to incorporate into the epic Dune series, you know? So it's very interesting. It's very interesting. So here we see Frank Herbert exploring a community under the influence of psychedelics, and because of that, they have like a hive mind, right? They have this hive mind that they don't even really notice. Yeah, again, it's just part of their life. And of course, in Dune, what do we have? We have the Fremen. We have the Bene Gesserit, these communities of people who are constantly under the influence of powerful psychedelics and have this like shared hive mind, mental and emotional connection at all times that's a part of their culture and a part of their community and everything. So the Santaroga Barrier is an exploration of that a little deeper. And so it's just very interesting to see how the town acts. And, as the mystery gets uncovered, right? Like, you're like, what's coming around the next corner? Huge page turner. You just want to see what happens next, right? And it all comes to a head in this big climax. I've never seen someone do this in another story, and it was so much fun. So what happens is, and again, spoilers, what happens is that since there's this hive mind, right, this just like connected energy throughout all the people in the town kind of has like a whole unconscious mind of its own, or a super conscious mind of its own. And if like you don't vibe with the town rejects you, okay? And that happens in real life. Like if you move to a new place, or you visit somewhere, and you just have this feeling like, I just don't fit here. Just the way I see the world, the way I feel, I just don't fit here. And so you're not comfortable there. And so, it's like opposite, or it's like it's like a magnetic repulsion. It's just, you just push away from each other, right? But in the Santaroga Barrier, the town rejects you violently, okay? But not directly. So what happens is, the energy of the town, the super conscious hive mind of the town, right? It nudges things, it manipulates reality just a little bit, it just nudges a thing here, nudges a thing there, and causes these accidents to happen, right? So when somebody's not vibing with the town, it causes these accidents to happen. So one example is our main character, who's not from this town, who like the town's trying to kill. He goes and gets soup at a diner, right? And the person preparing the soup just was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and some rat poison accidentally fell into the soup. Now, here's the important thing to note here is that it really was an accident. Like, it was not at all an intentional decision on part of like the cook or the server to put rat poison in the soup. It was actually an accident. So that when he realizes that there's rat poison in the soup, they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. The people aren't trying to kill him. The town is, right? The town is just using the unconscious motivation of the town is just making people make these little mistakes that they're not aware of, and they're so remorseful when they realize, they're not trying to fuck with him. The town is. And towards the end of the book, these accidents just happen faster and faster and faster as the town more violently tries to eject him from the area. And he starts being able to sense like when something bad is going to happen. Like he starts getting in touch with his intuition. And so, yeah, by the end of the book, it's just like bam, bam, bam. Like, he almost gets poisoned with the soup, and then he goes out and he almost gets hit by a car. And then he gets into a car accident and then takes his car in to work on. But then it explodes in the auto body shop, and it's just one thing after another. And it's just like, it just crescendos into this wild ride. I'll end it there. With that one, highly recommend it. It's so interesting, so fun. And you get to see Frank Herbert, explore what became a small part of the Dune universe, which is this like psychedelic hive mind and communities of people collectively under the influence of psychedelics. So very, very interesting, very fun. And one more thing I'll say about this that ties back into Frank Herbert's biography. That's just an interesting tidbit. So Frank Herbert had an experience. He was like driving his family. I think, I could be wrong. I think back from Mexico to like the next place they were going to live in the States. And he was on a mountain road and he was kind of cruising. He was kind of a reckless driver. He's one of those guys who's just like no seatbelt, just like, I got this, laying on the gas, confident, overconfident. And like he turns a corner, realizes there's some construction going on a bridge, right? And the bridge is kind of out, and there's like a way to like go around, but he realizes it's too late. He's cruising too fast. He wasn't driving carefully. And in that moment, right, time slows down because his thoughts speed up to try to keep him alive. And he realizes in that moment, if I break, I'm not going to be able to slow down enough to stop before the gap in this bridge, right? Like I'm gonna fall. I don't have enough time to like turn away, right? I'm going too fast. I'm gonna smash into something and it's gonna be terrible. The only way out of this is to just lay on the accelerator, but just speed through this, right? And he did it, and he just laid on the accelerator and just went over, right? Crazy reckless, you know. It ended up being the right move, you know. But like, you know, ideally you don't put yourself in that situation to begin with, Frankie boy. Okay? You know, Frankie wasn't perfect. None of us are perfect, you know. But yeah, so he had that experience. And, you know, after the adrenaline wore down of the experience and him almost killing his whole family in a terrible car wreck, he reflected and he's like, you know what? That was real interesting. You know, that was real interesting where time slowed down as my thoughts sped up. That was a curious thing. And so he incorporated literally that experience into the Santaroga Barrier. That exact experience happens to our main character in the Santaroga Barrier, where he is speeding towards a bridge. And again, a little accident, hive mind accident of the town. There's suddenly some work that needs to be done on the bridge. It was nighttime, he couldn't see. And that exact experience happened. So I wanted to tie that back just for fun. That like you read his biography, you get to see some of these like organic experiences that happen in real life that he incorporated in creative ways into his work, right? And obviously that kind of thing like comes up in Dune as well, you know, in just like how these people who become accustomed to spice, how they like move, you know, just like their thoughts are happening at just an entirely different frequency than everybody else's. And so like time just moves differently for them, you know? So again, just something organic that happened to him that made its way made its way into his work, you know, in different places. Just very interesting. But yeah, that's a good one, man. Santaroga Barrier, get on it, man. Oh, I read that so quick. I just sat there and I'm like, what's next? What's next? What's next? So good. All right, what should we do now? Let's do... Yeah. Okay, let's do this. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about a book called Destination Void. All right, and before I get into it, we'll talk about this came out in two different versions, right? So you have the original, and then you have a re-release at a later time, and it's like a Star Wars special edition, you know, where Frank Herbert was just like, oh, here's all the things that I wish I included in the original, but you know what? Just like the Star Wars special editions, maybe you should have kept it a little bit more concise, Frankie. You know, I don't know about this. Okay, so here's the original. I had to buy this especially on eBay and make sure that like the image in the listing was the book that was being sold, because it was a little hard to like find like the original release. And it even has those like, you know, classic drugstore sci-fi like red, you know, it's, I don't know. I just love that. It's so charming. So this is the original, right? Little guy. And then this is the re-release. This is all the extra stuff that Frank thought was important, right? And yeah, you know what? Let's get into it. I'll tell you, I don't think that was necessary. Now this was an interesting story, okay? It's an interesting experience because I enjoyed the bones of the story. I enjoyed I enjoyed the overall arc of the story, the events that transpired. I enjoyed the broad strokes, but the details were driving me crazy, right? I mean, I don't know, like, it's a little asking a little too much of the reader, in my opinion, in terms of like technical knowledge of mechanical and computer systems. Okay? It was just too specific. It's like you had to have like real in-depth experience and education in computers and engineering to really like understand what he was describing in certain moments, because there was a lot of drama. So I'll set the scene a little bit. It's Earth trying to populate distant planets, right? And so they're sending out these big ships full of cloned human beings in cryostasis or whatever. Excuse me. With a small crew tasked with carrying all these clones into a far distant planet, seeding a different galaxy with sentient human life, right? And they keep failing. They keep failing over and over again because the real test, and even the crew are clones as well, which adds an interesting element to the vibe of the story. But what's really happening is it's not just that they're trying to seed a distant galaxy. They are, but the real test is seeing if they could build like a balanced artificial intelligence system to run the ship. Because obviously it's a very complicated ship with a lot of moving parts, a lot of systems to be balanced and maintained. That would take that like a human mind couldn't manage. Like I guess like they could manage it, but it would be really, really demanding, stressful, just debilitating. And so they outfit these ships with an artificial intelligence system that I believe incorporates an organic human brain. Okay, and they keep failing. And the ship keeps killing everybody, classic AI shit, right? And so, yeah, the broad strokes of the story are pretty fun, watching these characters interact, because in this story, very early on, almost immediately, the artificial intelligence system craps out and the backup craps out, okay? These artificial intelligence systems, they just like implode, they just can't handle it. And so right away, our crew is tasked with now taking shifts and managing all the systems on the ship. And there's a lot of fun drama in that because, as I said, it's extremely demanding, just like balancing oxygen levels in different places and making sure all the like the people in stasis are like all their vitals are being monitored and balanced in different ways, and just all the different things the ship needs to run. It's just this big complicated, all this big complicated machinery and computers, and they're all like balancing everything and maintaining it manually. And so right away, there's just this huge weight on the shoulder of the crew that just starts to just suck the life out of them and stress them out and make them irritable. And it leads to arguments and heightened emotions, and all that stuff is great. But there's a lot of like drama that's supposed to come through with like what's happening with these mechanical and computer systems, right? And you, like kind of the mystery, like the things that have been kept from them about the mission are slowly revealed to them as they dig deeper into like the computer programming and the artificial intelligence system and the machinery. And, we're supposed to be on the ride with them, like as this information is revealed, as they notice these things. But Frank Herbert just used he was good with machine systems. He had a knack for that. He had a knack for like, engineering and mechanical systems and even basic computer systems. But he was just explaining this in a way that wasn't accessible to everybody. And it wasn't accessible to me, like I know a little bit, I can make inferences. Even if I don't understand something exactly, I can kind of feel what's happening. But it was really, really hard in this, It was just pages of just like, yep, I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know what they're talking about. And just getting to the end and being like, okay, I think this is what kind of happened, which does take you out of it a little bit, So it's just very interesting. So yeah, added a bunch of shit. And I think there was all the extra shit he added, I read a bit of the original and there was still quite a bit of that, but I think he added even more when he re-released it. And so it's just disappointing. That being said, I pushed through. The story overall was interesting enough that I just kept pushing through, which is kind of rare. Sometimes if I just run into a wall too many times in a row, I just call it quits. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to circle back on this later. But the story was interesting enough that I just kept pushing through. So it was an interesting experience. I'll never forget it because it was real weird, to just like not really comprehend just pages at a time. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe if I knew just a little bit more about some of these specialized fields, like I would understand it better, but tough to get through. I'd say get into this if if you're going all the way, if you're trying to read all of Frank Herbert's stuff, or if you're trying to read most of it. I wouldn't skip this, but yeah, just be prepared for this one. It's hard. It's a hard read, really entertaining, and a lot that is comprehensible and fun, just very relatable human experiences. But yeah, just pages at a time of just, I don't know what the fuck they're talking about, real weird. So yeah, but interesting. All right, moving on. Just a couple more. Okay. This is a longer one. Frank Herbert dug a little deeper on this. What are we doing here? What are we doing? This is, this is almost 500 pages. But yeah, this one's called The White Plague. Okay. Took me a while to get into this and read this, because I got this book during the pandemic, right? And so, it's about a global pandemic. And so I'm like, yeah, not really offering the escapism I was looking for, I'm kind of doing that already, I don't really need to occupy my fantasies with that as well. So I waited a while, okay? But yeah, I got into this, and it's good. It's good. It's, as you can see, again, it's longer, so the pace is a little slower. It really takes its time in some places, just settling into some feelings, which I think is a good thing. I think it could have been a little shorter. There's some times where I think like there's still the sections where like this still could have had the same weight, but had a little bit more flow, a little bit more movement, But that being said, I don't mind slow paced stuff, I love watching like an older movie from the 70s. There's some movies from the 70s that are just molasses, man. Slow as molasses. And you know what? It's refreshing. Not everything has to be zippy and grab your attention. Like you can just sit in some feelings for a while. So I'm not against that. I do think it could have been a little more punchy. Just a little. I appreciate it the way it is. Could have been a little more punchy in some parts. But, okay. I don't even have that much to say about it. It's a fun story. It's a guy who moves to Ireland, right, with his family, his wife, and I think maybe one kid, one young kid. I forget if it's a son or a daughter, whatever. And he moves to Ireland for a job, and almost immediately, his family dies in an IRA car bombing, right? Like right away, like day one, like, oh, it's weird to, move across the world. But hey, my wife has a good attitude. My kid's a little scared of the new place, but I can see that they're like settling in already. And then out of nowhere, just BAM! And he's like looking out the window, just no, and yeah, I forget his exact job, yeah, I don't remember what his job was. Does it say? Yeah, he's a scientist. Turns into a renegade scientist, right? When his family got Batmaned, by the IRA, and yeah, he's an extremely intelligent scientist, extremely capable, and he has all the knowledge. He decides in that moment he's gonna take his revenge on all of Ireland. He's gonna murder Ireland. Not the IRA, not any of the people who planned the bomb or whatever. No, Ireland. Fuck everybody. Okay? And so he goes into seclusion. He maxes out a bunch of credit cards. He takes a severance package. He collects all this money, cashes in his retirement accounts. And he goes into isolation, and starts manufacturing a super virus to release in Ireland, like a untreatable, antibiotic resistant, completely debilitating, fucked up, deadly super virus that he's planning on releasing in Ireland and murdering Ireland. Okay. But of course, we've all been there before, right? You make a teensy weensy virus. You just want to kill a few 100,000 people. Before you know it, whoops. God, my bad. It gets out and starts killing millions. We've all been there. We've all done it, Geez, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? That's just life. What are you going to do? So yeah, that's what happens. Yeah, I don't even have much to say, it's got a lot of fun little moments, some moments where he almost gets caught, but slips under the radar. He goes through a very interesting emotional journey because he's so fueled by rage and revenge, but it takes him a long time to manufacture this virus and go through this whole process that he starts to, his feelings change and develop over time, but there was so much initial momentum to do this that almost just carries him and pushes him through the whole process, to the point of releasing the virus and going through it all. And then I believe the whole third act of the book, he travels to Ireland and ends up traveling with a small group of people. They're all traveling to the safe place, with any post-apocalyptic environment. There's always oh, this is the safe space. And he has a really interesting emotional journey, traveling with them, seeing the actual on the ground effect of what he did. And the whole experience almost totally makes him numb. But as he really lays his eyes on what he's done, it starts to, his empathy starts creeping back a little bit. And there's a lot of tension there because they don't know that he did it, so there's kind of some intensity there. So yeah, slower book, pretty interesting. Not as tight and punchy and page-turny as some of the other ones I talked about, but still worth it if you want to get into some Frank Herbert stuff. Yeah, and again, that's the White Plague, all right? It begins in Ireland, but soon spreads throughout the entire world. A virulent new disease, expressly designed to target only women. Oh, I forgot about that. He didn't want to murder everybody, just women. Just women. Because I think he didn't just want everyone to die, right? He wanted them to suffer. He wanted them to just like live in loneliness, never be able to have family. He wanted them to suffer too. I think that's why. Dear Lord. As fully half of the human race dies off at a frightening pace and life on Earth faces extinction, panicked people and governments struggle to cope with the global crisis. Infected areas are quarantined or burned to the ground. The few surviving women are locked away in hidden reserves while frantic doctors and scientists race to find a cure. Anarchy and violence consume the planet. The plague is the work of a solitary individual who calls himself the Madman. As government security forces feverishly hunt for the renegade scientist, he wanders incognito through a world that will never be the same. Society, religion, and morality are all irrevocably transformed by the White Plague. You know, it's fun. It's a fun read. It has some interesting things going on, you know. Yeah, again, a little slower, but yeah, you got some time and you're not too traumatized by the extremely real fucking pandemic that just happened, then yeah, get in there. Give it a try. And now, for something completely different. Okay? This one is good. This one's damn good. But it's a different animal. Totally different. Not sci-fi at all. Not sci-fi at all. Not set in the future. Not set in some like different timeline. Set in this world. Set here. In the present. This one's called, and if you know this one, you know what I'm talking about. This one's wild. Okay? Soul Catcher. Okay, Frank Herbert had a lot of feelings about this, right? This was an interesting one to write. An interesting kind of departure of vibe, but wow, what a story. God damn. All right, so I'll give you the broad strokes here. Okay? If it's set in the present of when this was written. I don't know. You know, like sometime in the mid 20th century, probably, right? So a young, okay, sorry. A young Native American gentleman, right? He obviously knows the extremely unfortunate history of his people, who is raised in by pretty traditional, like, Native American family, right? That kept a good portion, as much as they could, kept a good portion of their culture alive and passed down a lot of traditions and things like that, traditions and knowledge, and they just, you know, they as much as they could, they kept it going, and they tried to keep the spirit alive in him. And so he's aware of his history. He's aware of and he's aware of his family and of the culture. And he experiences a terrible thing. Okay, his beloved sister. Something happens to her. Something real bad. I don't even really want to say it, you know? Something real bad happens to his female sister in the woods with some other guys, you know? Something real bad. I don't really want to say the word. You know what I'm talking about? Something not good. Okay? And that shit fucks her up so much, she takes her own life. Okay? All right? Obviously, horrible thing to happen to her, right? Jeez. Come on, man. Just all gas on this story. It's like, okay, first things first, here's what happened. And you're like, God damn. That's where we're starting? Where is this story going? Actually, if you saw a movie, that's how it opens. Just in the woods. With that shit. Okay? God damn. All right? So obviously, horrendously terrible thing to happen to her. Horrible, horrible, horrible. But our main character is her brother, right? Who goes on living, seeing this happen to his sister, right? And these guys that did the thing, they were all white guys. Not great, okay? Not that it would have been any better if it was anybody else, but we have this Native American, this young Native American man, right? Aware of what the white man has done for generations to his people. And now the white man cometh again and just, did that shit to his sister, okay? Did that shit to his family, in his life. And then she took her own life, okay? So he is having a psychotic break. He cannot process this. He is furious. He is beyond furious. He's losing his fucking mind, right? Kind of. And so he decides a way to process this is he's going to go on kind of a, the vision quest thing, He's going to go out into the woods and commune with the entities in the forest, because there's a part of Native American culture that there's that the whole world, in all of nature, it has consciousness, right? And so they don't just talk about the wind. It's like the wind spirits, It's like it's a living thing, right? That has feelings and intentions and that kind of thing, right? It's just like us. And so he goes into the woods, looking for answers, right? And he communes with, I think the spirit is called the soul catcher or something like that. And or maybe he becomes the soul catcher through communing with the spirit. And so the conclusion he comes to after he goes into the woods, essentially looking inside of himself to try to find out what he needs to do, he realizes that he needs to be the one to balance the scales that have been so egregiously thrown off balance by the white man, right? The white man have fucked us into oblivion. I need to balance the scales. I'm going to be the one to make this right? And so what he realizes he needs to do to make it right is he needs to make a sacrifice, right? He needs to sacrifice an innocent white, right? What does he mean by innocent? Well, someone young. Someone who has not reached maturity yet, someone who doesn't know any better. He needs to sacrifice an innocent white, And so he works at this. He works at like a summer camp kind of thing. And he kidnaps a 13-year-old white kid. He feels it. He's like, yes, you will be the one. And he just kidnaps this kid and starts ties this kid's hands up, puts him on a rope leash and starts walking him through the. Isn't this story fucking intense? What the fuck? Don't think I'm just breezing by this. This is a wild ass story. It's just Frank Herbert, man. Frank Herbert had some deep pockets. Took some risks, threw some punches, man. Holy shit. God damn, this was one of his earlier books too. Fuck. Yeah, starts walking this kid through the woods. But you know what? Oh my God. Again, you're just fucking, if you can handle it, you're just glued to the page, because there's just this whole emotional journey that happens with these two characters, because like this 13-year-old kid, he doesn't know what's going on. At first he just thinks this is some weird, like some weird prank, some weird like hazing ritual or something. And then he realizes like, oh shit, this is real. I am in danger. And then they just keep going and they keep talking, and like they start to bond a little bit, and kind of like a Stockholm syndrome situation, kind of, but they start to like bond a little bit, and the kid, like the 13-year-old kid, starts to kind of see the world the way that this other guy sees it, and vice versa, and God, yeah, just what an emotional journey. And the whole book switches between like, it's one chapter of them in the woods, right? Just going through like the energetic process, right? Like the Native American man, he doesn't necessarily have like a straightforward plan. He's just like following the energetic current, right? He just needs to go through this energetic process to make the proper sacrifice, right? So he's like feeling it. So he's like walking through the woods, making decisions as he goes, waiting for the right time to kill this kid, right? To balance the scales, right? And like fulfill his destiny, make his life right. And yeah, oh God, fucking crazy, man. So intense. And this book is a great example of my favorite thing that Frank Herbert does in his books. He does this in Dune. He does this in Soulcatcher. He does this in The White Plague. Does this in Santaroga. He does this in almost all of his books. There's never a clear, and you could argue with me on this. You could, but I'm going to put this out there. And this is why Frank Herbert's one of my favorite authors, is there's never a clear antagonist and a protagonist. There's never a clear evil villain and a clear good guy. Like, obviously there's characters that are fucked up, like, yeah, is the Baron fucked up and shitty? Yeah. Like, that's where you could argue, like, but then again, he just kind of represents like unchecked hedonism at a societal scale, he's just like a result, that kind of thing. But yeah, there's never a clear villain and hero. There's never a good guy and a bad guy, it's always just oscillating, it's always just oscillating. So in Soulcatcher, like, it oscillates between this young Native American man. Obviously, what he's doing is wild, right? At first glance, you look at it and you're like, oh my, that's fucked up. He's kidnapping this kid. He's walking him through the woods. He tied him up. He's going to murder him. That's fucked, man. But as the story goes on, Frank Herbert does this clever thing where he makes it make sense for a little bit. Right? He's just playing with it, And so as the story goes on, you're just never quite sure, is this character crazy or not? Right? Is this young Native American man, has he had a psychotic break, right? Where he's just disassociating and doing this really fucked up thing? Or is he actually like following the natural current of the universe? Is he actually like fulfilling a very real destiny? So it just all to say, you're just never quite sure, like, is he crazy or is he right? Is he right to do this? And you can feel however you want, but like that's how it's presented in the book. It just plays with you, and that's why I fucking love Frank Herbert, right? Nothing is cut and dry. Every character is complex, and you're always asking yourself, is this a good guy? Is this a good person? Or are they a horrible person? You know? And because that's what life feels like. Life is entirely made of paradox. Just everywhere, just completely counterintuitive, contradicting situations, just jumbled mixes of everything that like push on each other in all sorts of weird ways, and you never really know if you're coming or going. Nobody really knows what they're doing at the end of the day. I don't care how much you think you do, you don't. Okay? Nobody does. It's just this experience that you can't put a pin in it. You can't nail it down. And God, that vibe comes through in almost all of Frank Herbert's work, which makes his books just feel so alive. It feels like life, you know? And yeah, just an incredible example of that in The Soul Catcher. You just go through the whole book like, I don't know how I feel about this guy, you know? And in that way, it like represents life so much more accurately than just like hero villain, you know? Yeah. Yeah. And I want to say more about this. I kind of don't want to spoil it, but I don't know. It's an old book anyway. Fuck it, man. But I really want to say this because I really appreciate this. So you get to the end. Oh yeah. Well, before that. So, it switches between chapters. It's like one chapter, it'll be, like them walking through the woods, having interactions, talking, doing things together, you know, him explaining what's happening, all that kind of stuff. And then the next chapter will be like law enforcement agencies, like trying to figure out where these guys are, because they've been alerted. Yeah, this kid's been kidnapped, and they're just moving through the woods, and they're moving quickly, and they don't know what the intention is. They don't know what's going on. And so it switches between chapters, and a really cool thing happens. It's just a cool writing thing that happens that I appreciate that he did here. That they just keep getting closer and closer to each other, right? So yeah, one chapter of them in the woods, one chapter of law enforcement, and they just keep, as the chapters go on, they just keep moving closer to one another until like the last chapter, then they're in the same chapter together, that's just a cool like writing technique that was just really fun. Okay. So yeah, I thought it was worth mentioning. Just, it was something cool to appreciate there. But yeah, so Frank Herbert had a decision to make that when he got to the end of this book, he had to be like, okay, does he kill the kid? Right? What am I going to do? And yeah, spoiler alert, he kills the kid. Yep. The sacrifice has occurred, right? And you know what? You know, you can make any ending work, you know, if you're clever. If you're clever and creative, you can take any ending and make it heavy, make it impactful, make it meaningful, right? But I always appreciate when somebody makes the harder choice, right? When somebody chooses the riskier option, chooses the option that like, oh, people aren't going to like this. This is going to be upsetting. But let's see if we can work with that. You know? Let's see if we can, I know they're going to be upset. Let's see if we can take that energy and make it okay. You know? Let's see if we can work with that. So, yeah, just another reason I like Frank Herbert, not afraid to take the risky decision, to do the crazy thing, to do the thing that might upset you, you know? And see if you can go with it, you know? So I appreciate that you get to the end and, you know, because I imagine a lot of people are reading this and they're like, well, there's no way that I'm going to get to the end of this story and I'm going to have to imagine a 13-year-old boy dying in the woods. Okay? There's just no, he wouldn't do that to me. Guess again. Yeah. So I appreciate that. I appreciate where you get to the end and you're like, oh, god damn. All right, Frank. All right. Not taking the path less traveled today, aren't we, buddy? You know? So yeah, I respect that. I respect that. Yeah. And if you're making shit, you know, take some risks, you know, choose the riskier options sometimes. See if you can make it work, you know, fuck with people's expectations. It's not all about, you know, it's not all about making something perfectly edible, you know, a little bitterness, right? A little sourness, right? A little something gross, right? Those are ingredients too. They're harder to work with, right? But that's a challenge you should accept, you know, in my opinion. Absolutely. But yeah, so that's Soul Catcher, man. Yeah, I'm sorry if anything I explained in that made you uncomfortable. It's a fucked up story, but I had to talk about it, man. It just stands apart from Frank Herbert's catalog of work. Oh, and listen, written well, such a good story. You know, if you can handle it, get in there. Get in there. Ain't never read another book like it, I'll tell you that. God. Crazy story. So many risks in the story. Yeah, wild. Yeah, if you can handle it, get in there. Yeah, but let's see what else is on the table. Let's see if I got anything else for you. I think I do. Hold on. Okay. I had to make a little cut there. I just had to kind of think about what I wanted my next move to be. I was just contemplating some things, okay? Yeah, I do have one more book to talk about, okay? I don't have it with me here. I literally just yesterday lent it to a friend of mine because he's wanted to read it for a long time. So I just lent that to him, so I don't have it, but it's Hellstrom's Hive. Hellstrom's Hive. All right, this is the last book I'm going to talk about today. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But yeah, Hellstrom's Hive, okay? Here we have another interesting thought experiment, okay? Kind of similar, it has some similarities to Santaroga Barrier, okay? A guy is investigating a mysterious compound, okay? Investigating this mysterious situation, right? People are confused. People are intrigued. They send him in, try to get some more information, okay? I'm going to cut to the chase with Hellstrom's Hive, okay? I'm going to get to the good part. We find out that there is this gentleman who got this idea in his head that just the way human society works, the way it works is just not... It's just not the way, okay? It's not the best it could be. It's not the most efficient. It's not the most, like, natural. I don't really believe, like, in anything being more natural than anything else. That's another conversation, you know? But this is what character we're talking about, you know? And so he's a very capable, intelligent guy, and so... he gets the idea in his head, like, I'm going to see if I can create an entirely new society that works in an entirely different way, right? And so he starts to build a society, a human society, modeled after insect societies, right? So that's where we get the hive, right? So they're operating like more like bees instead of like, you know, how we see normal human operations in cities and towns and countries and all that. You know, government bodies and stuff. So yeah, we get this secret underground community, right? Because his plan is to like build this up, and then like release it upon the world, and going in with the intent to like have this type of society like usurp the society we have currently, and this becomes the way of the world. And that way is, again, it's like an insect community. So So again, we have an exploration of a hive mind situation. Frank Herbert loved himself a good hive mind. And you know what? Who the fuck doesn't love themselves a good hive mind? Because it's really intriguing, isn't it? Kind of feels like there's a hive mind everywhere. That connects everything, you know? Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's more subtle. You know, you see it in forests, you know? Like when you learn about how trees can communicate with each other, how like if a disease, if trees start to become infected with the disease, they can communicate to trees like further into the woods of what's coming, and those trees can build up an immunity to it, you know? So things like that, little things like that clue you in on like, oh, there's a network at play. And obviously with trees, you know, there's like fungal networks that allow for the transmission of messages and information and nutrients and other things. So it's almost like an organic internet, right? But we have a digital internet. We still have an organic internet, right? We have thought, which seems to just be in the ether, you know? Like, do thoughts come from your brain, or does your brain just receive thoughts? Does your brain just tune into them, you know? Is your brain a generator or an antenna? You know, a little bit of both. Who's to say? So it's those fun thoughts. So who doesn't love himself a good exploration of a hive mind? Because you get to dig deep into like, what would it look like if humans really like shared that sense that like I'm not individual, right? Individuality is an illusion. It's something that you believe. It doesn't reflect concrete reality. It's something that you believe to play the game a certain way. So what would humans look like if we weren't, the illusion of individuality was gone, and we really were just features of a whole, you know? And so here we have this secret underground society operating like a beehive in all the same ways, and everyone's minds are connected, you know? Because that's always a fun thing, you know? Like when you step on an ant, right? Do you kill that ant, you know? Or are you just, you know, cutting off a small part of a larger organism, right? All these things move together, you know, that kind of thing, right? So it's a big exploration of that. Very, very fun story. The mystery slowly gets revealed over time. Again, huge page turner. Lots of interesting experiences as the main character slowly starts to find out more and more about what's really going on and goes deeper and deeper into the facility. And it kind of hits a climax, no pun intended, as you'll see in a moment, where like he goes deep enough into the facility to like find like the fucking breeding room, you know, which is just like, you know, just one of those crazy, just like wild, cacophonous, slimy orgies, like when you lift up a rock in your garden and there's just a bunch of stuff wiggling under there, you know, like the damn like Zion dance scene in the second Matrix movie, you know, just wiggling, undulating mass of flesh, you know, that shit, you know, pretty rad shit, bro. No, but it kind of hits a climax there where he like he sees that, and it just the full weight of this hive mind organism of humans like hits him, and he realizes how deep these people are like entrenched in this like hive society, you know. And he like he's just like, oh, he just sees that and he's like, oh shit, That's a lot of information all at the same time. A lot of smells. I'm gonna get out of here. Anyway, I'm sorry I don't have it here to show you. That's another really good one. Okay. But listen, I'm gonna end it there. All right, we've been talking for a while. Okay, I'm gonna end it there. There are other individual Frank Herbert novels. There's some short ones. There's some longer ones. There's 2 other series. There's the Consentiency series, and there's another one. I'm sorry, I forget what it's called. There's 2 books of short. There's 2 books of short stories that are compiled. Those are really interesting too. Some of those short stories are the seeds of longer series, which is really cool. But that's really fun too, because you just get little ideas, little short, just a few pages, just concise, just like, hey, check this shit out, very interesting, called like The Worlds of Frank Herbert and, like Eyes, I think, sorry, sorry, man, this is casual. This is all casual. Okay. But yeah, so what I've talked about today, if you really like Dune, right? If you like the style, if you like the feelings you got from reading Dune or watching Dune or whatever, dig a little deeper, read some of these other individual Frank Herbert novels, okay? They are so fucking good. And the ones I talked about today, I'd recommend start with those, whatever kind of grabbed you, start with one of those. And then if you really want to go down the road, there's a lot more you can read. There's probably like, I don't know, outside of the ones I talked about today, there's probably, I don't know, like 7, 8, 9 more, of varying lengths. Start with one of these. And yeah, if you're still digging it, you want to go all the way, you can. All these books you can get like really cheap on, thrift books or A-books. That's where I got pretty much all of them. I had to order one off of eBay because it was really specific, and I got a couple off of Amazon early on before I got hip to A-books. So they're all very, very accessible. They're just so thought-provoking. They're like, they're philosophical, but in a balanced kind of way, They explore things I'm a sucker for, super conscious mind, psychedelic societies, just tension and drama. And yes, again, more than anything, oh my God, I just love the ambiguity, right? Just that weird in-between feeling, right? That life feels like. Life is never cut and dry. Whenever you're absolutely sure of something in life, you can be absolutely sure that you're not seeing the whole picture. It's impossible to see the whole picture, and that feeling is in all of these books, which is why Frank Herbert is one of my favorite authors and why he deserves, if that tickles you, why he deserves, digging deeper and checking out some of this stuff. So that's why I want to talk about all this stuff today, just to get it on your radar, man. Spread the love for everything outside of Dune. Dune takes up the big spotlight, okay? It takes up the big spotlight, and for good reason. It's fucking incredible, man. It's what got me started on everything, obviously, right? But it's not the whole story, okay? There is a lot more, like, on the wings, right? And so I just wanted to put some light on that today. Bring some attention to that, maybe, get you a little interested, get you a little intrigued, so you start poking around in the Frank Herbert attic, dig out some boxes, check some of this shit out, all right? Okay? So yeah, and I think I did it, all right? I think I did it, all right? So yeah, I hope you found some of this interesting, let me know if you've read any of these other books, or if you have any feelings that are different to me, or whatever. I love talking about this. It's just, this is just how I feel, it's just, I love just more than anything. I just love like dialogues. I love communication, so let me know how you feel about these things. If you've read any of these books, if there's any that you just don't like, or you do, whatever, I'm interested, And yeah, if you stuck around this long, yeah, thanks for being here, man. All right? More to come. All right? I'm fucking sticking with it, my friend. All right? Every Tuesday at 8 a.m., we'll have another one of these for you. It's going to be sharing stories, talking about stuff I like. All right? Maybe I'll even have some guests talking about stuff they like, Maybe. We'll see. I'm going to try to pull it off, But yeah, more to come. Stay tuned for more. I'm just going to keep cranking them out. So get cozy, man. Get cozy. Enjoy yourself, okay? And lastly, whatever, dude. If you want to give me a little support, all right, I got the Patreon. It's there. No pressure. I'm going to be doing this anyway. This is really fulfilling for me. And again, I'm doing all sorts of stuff in the background. I'm making music. I'm working on a new album. I got a big writing project I'm doing. I'm always doing some shit. So if you want to support me in this and all the other bullshit I do, okay, this is what I love to do. I'm never going to stop. So if you want to help me out a little bit, I got the Patreon. I got links. You can listen to my music. Whatever, man. Whatever. I'm just glad you're here now. But yeah. Thanks again. More to come. Okay? All right. Bye. It's good to see you. Yeah. Yeah. You know how I'm feeling? I'm feeling fucking sweaty. Yeah. It is a hot, humid night. Southern wind. All right. Bye. God damn. I'm dripping. Okay? I'm dripping. I got the AC running. It ain't doing shit up here. Buddy. God damn, son. God, it's fucking dark out in the 90s. Bye. I'm gonna get in front of a fan right now. Put an ice pack on my neck. Bye.